Okay, we're starting. Hi, everybody. Oily here. Welcome and welcome to the newbies out there. I appreciate you guys coming, and thank you, Finger Lakes Prepper, for sending them this way. Backwoods raised, and I need to mute my external. Just about almost made that mistake again. So, hold on. Luckily, I caught it before it started screaming at me. There we go. Okay, so thank you, Finger Lakes Prepper, for sending them. Welcome, Southern Arc Homestead. Glad you're here. Backwoods Raised, Finger Lakes Prepper, Wee Tree, Bonsai, and we have Iowa K.I. The Oklahoma Prepper is trying to figure out how to get in here. He's having major issues trying to get in here. And we have Squibload here, Hawaii Volcano Squad. Glad to have. Aloha. Now all of a sudden it says 4 watching now. That's really weird. There was now 3. I know there's more than that here on the externals.
It's Google just messing with you.
That is weird. Yeah, mouse is MIA. I'm not sure what's going on. I think that she must be having something going on, because this isn't like her. Normally she'll message me back on Messenger, and so hope that her and her hubby are both okay. It's kind of worrying me. He's got me worried. But anyway, everybody just say a prayer for her, please, for her and her husband's well-being and safety, and for whatever's going on. And we'll just have to leave it at that, because I'm not quite sure. But anyways, I'm glad you all came. Today we're going to be discussing like your winter auto preparedness, things that you can do for maintenance on your vehicle to make sure it's up to par for the winter, and also to kind of get the vehicle going. Golly, it's really doing weird stuff out there. But anyway, and also, you know, some things to keep in your vehicle that might come in handy if you are, you know, if you slide off the road, if you're stuck, if you're stuck in your vehicle for whatever reason. You know, there's people that die because it's a winter storm and they're stuck on the highway and things like that. So you want to have some things for whatever. So thank you guys, Squib in Hawaii, for being here, and thank everybody for coming. We appreciate you being here. Okay, so what are some things that you guys think are important to have in your vehicle? Squib, you know auto maintenance. What are some things that you can do to kind of get your vehicle prepared, first of all, for real winter weather?
Well, I can tell you what I did today. My wife came home from work and handed me the keys to her car and told me that one of the tire pressure sensors in her car was reading low. So what I did was I brought all 4 tires up to spec. On the inside of the driver's side door, they're not the door, the frame of the car, should be right in that area. There'll be a sticker, and it'll say what size tires are supposed to be on the car and what their cold inflation should be. On her car is 35 pounds per square inch. So,
how far off was it to get that sensor to on a computer sensor to go off on her car?
It was down to 30 pounds. So,
and yeah, it's supposed to be 35.
Supposed to be 35. So what I did was I got all 4 to 35. I've just got a portable air compressor. It connects to a car battery, and so it runs off 12 volts direct current, and it's loud, but it's portable. It comes in a nice bag with a pouch, so I keep needle valves in there for inflating things like footballs and basketballs and stuff. I keep a tire pressure gauge and a mechanical gauge in there. I prefer those over the digital gauges. I know they're old-fashioned, but they work. I just hooked it up to the battery. I started the car and kept the car running in idle in park while I did it. I recommend that if you're going to do more than, say, a football or something like that, that you just go ahead and run the car and let the alternator power this thing. Don't drain your battery over it. In doing that and connecting it, I got to check the battery posts, and the car's only 3 years old, so battery posts are still clean, but you'd be surprised. You can get a pencil thin layer of white powdery rust between the post and the terminal, and you can't see it unless you take the terminal off. And that's enough to create enough resistance to make it hard or impossible to start the car on a cold morning. But the posts look good, and I got all the tires to the same. And you want to have the tires as close to even as possible. You want to go for that manufacturer's spec, unless, of course, you put a tire on there that is not the OEM tire size and the original tire size, in which case then you've got to go with a different spec. Don't ask me what it is, because I keep everything original equipment. And if they're all even, then they're going to wear evenly and it's going to ride more evenly. Now, if she has this problem repeat, then I'm going to go ahead and take the wheel off the car and take it down to the tire shop, and they can check it. You can get something called a rim leak if you bump a curb when you're driving or something like that. We've got lots of potholes here in Michigan, that sort of thing. It could just be a very slow air leak or something like that. If it just stays, then it's just a fluke, because the temperature just changed. We had it up in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it just dropped, and this morning it was in the 50s. So a temperature change will mess with your tire, your air pressures. Also, if you do a tire rotation, if you take it into the tire shop or you decide to do it yourself in the driveway, sometimes when you rotate the tires, it'll throw off the tire pressure sensors. And there's a way to reset it. It'll either be in the owner's manual, or you have to take it to the dealership, and they can do it. If you have your tires rotated at the dealer, they'll just do it. But there should be a reset in the owner's manual. You have to look it up. You're going to have to do some reading, but that's how you get around that. But sometimes a tire rotation will throw them off.
Well, speaking of tires, like you said, making sure that they're in good shape, that your spare's in good shape, and that it's inflated and ready to go. Because, I mean, some people, they just don't check that stuff. Hey, BC, welcome, and welcome to Jeep Thing. Glad to have you here.
As far as checking the spare, about 2 weeks ago, my wife wanted me to show her and the kids how to change a tire. So I got out the jack stand and floor jack and breaker bar and all that, and she goes, "No, I want you to show me with the tools that come with this car. Don't show me with your tools from the shed." So I cleared everything out of the trunk and showed her how to get the spare out of the trunk and all that, and I showed her how long it takes with the jack that comes in the car and the lug wrench and everything. And then when I lowered the car, I slid my floor jack underneath there and used regular tools, hand tools, and showed her how much faster it is. And but she wanted to know how to do that. Now, I will say this: if you're a female and you don't have the upper body strength, and you've got maybe some rusted lug nuts, or they're just on there really tight, and you're trying to take a lug nut wrench that comes with the car, and you're trying to break free these lug nuts, and they're not coming free. Everybody remember rule: righty tighty, lefty loosey. So you want to go left counterclockwise. Put the
that also works for plumbing. That also works for plumbing.
Yes. Okay. So put the lever part of the bar on the lug wrench horizontal if you can, or as close to horizontal as possible, and then stand over top of it and kick down with your foot. Hit this thing with your foot. Your leg strength will always be more than your arm strength. You can break free a stuck lug nut by kicking straight down with your foot and hitting this thing as square as possible, and it'll break it free. Once you get it free, then you can use your hands and spin the lug nuts free. You wanna break them loose before you jack up the vehicle. You don't want to take them off, but you want to break them loose. If you jack up the vehicle and try to break them loose, you're just going to spin the whole wheel. So I showed her all these things, and that was 2 weeks ago. So we know on her car the spare's in good shape and all the tools are there and that sort of thing. But yeah, you want to make sure that you've got it, especially if you didn't buy this car originally, you bought it used, and you probably never even checked. What if it doesn't have a spare?
What if it doesn't have a spare?
Yeah, I mean, what if you bought the car used and you'd never even bothered to check the trunk, and then the first time you get a flat tire, you go, "Oh crap, this guy sold me a car without a spare tire."
That's why we're doing this. But how do you feel about that fix a flat stuff? Now, there are little air deals that you can plug into your cigarette lighter and air pump tires, but on really large tires and vehicles that doesn't work too terribly well. But
the cigarette lighter one isn't going to get you as much power as connecting it directly to your battery. So I recommend you get one that has the alligator clips and connects to the battery posts. I will say that they're not that expensive. You can go to the big box auto parts stores. I think the one I bought was about 8 years ago was about $35, and it comes in a case and whatnot. It is wearing out, but I've used it to inflate lots of tires and balls for the kids and bike tires and things like that. So it's paid for itself over and over again. But they're not very expensive, and you can get them at pretty much any hardware store, automotive parts store. As far as operation, I mean, it's pretty simple. There's a button and that's it. I would recommend getting a tire gauge while you're there too. They're not that expensive. You can keep it in the glove box with your flashlight, that sort of thing. Old-fashioned tire gauge. All right, I'm rambling, so I lost my train of thought there.
Great. Tire gauge. And what are some other basic tools that you want to have? Oh, also, getting your wheels balanced, right? That can,
Yep.
Did you mention that? I didn't know if I heard you say that.
Okay, so as far as the balancing, what can happen is you got these wheel weights that they attach to the wheel, and that's when they balance it, they put them in certain places and it keeps it balanced while it's rotating at high speed. And these wheel weights can fall off. You can bump a curb, they can fall off. If you lose it, the car's going to start to wobble, that sort of thing. If you don't get it rebalanced, you're going to wear out that tire faster, that sort of thing. It's really more about how much do you want to pay for a set of tires. And depending on what kind of car you've got, you may have to replace all 4 tires. Some cars, if you have one tire go bad, you got to replace all 4. On an all-wheel drive vehicle or a vehicle with directional tires or things like that, sometimes, depending on the age, how many thousand miles can you go before they're all out of balance? So you want to make sure that you keep the tire inflation up, that you make sure that you have your alignments and that you have the tires balanced.
I never spend money on that stuff when I go get my safety check. When they always tell me, oh, your aligners, they show me the laser thing about it, but it's like, man, I drive over crap when I go shooting. I drive over the worst, most terrible road you could possibly imagine to get up. And it's just like dodging potholes the size of the moon craters. And it's like, what's the point if I have to go up a road that's just going to knock them right out of balance the first time I go shooting?
Well, the cars aren't that fragile, but a real simple way to check your alignment is to find a flat stretch of road where there's no traffic and drive down that road and let go of the steering wheel. If the car stays straight, or for the most part straight, if it drifts a little bit here or there because maybe it hits a little bit of a bump and that pulls it one, that's one thing. Or if you can just touch it with your finger and hold that wheel straight without any effort, then your alignment's good. If you have to hold it to the right or to the left, then your alignment's off.
I think what they said was that both tires were pointed outwards or bowed inwards as far as the front tires.
But the alignment really isn't part of your winterizing. Your alignment is really about how much you want to pay for a set of tires, because you're just going to eat up tires faster. It's also going to affect your fuel economy. So for winterizing, though, just making sure you've got decent tread on your tires and make sure they're properly inflated and that sort of thing. Another thing, as far as the tools, I prefer not to use the tools that come with the vehicle if I have to change a tire. Now, for some people that may not be an option, but in addition to the inexpensive
okay, so Squid, just take me as and the listeners on a trip to Ace Hardware. What would you get?
Okay, well, I would buy a small floor jack. Sometimes they come in a plastic case, which makes it more convenient to carry, or more, I guess, organized in the trunk. I would get a small jack stand. They'll probably come in pairs, but you might be able to get it separate. You really only need one. And I would get a socket, a 1/2-inch drive socket, deep well preferred, 6-point preferred. They come in 6 or 12-point. That will fit your lug nut. Maybe you take the lug nut wrench that comes with the car and you take a lug nut off and you go into the hardware store and you match up until you find it. For example, on my wife's car is a 22-millimeter socket. So I have a 22-millimeter deep well 6-point socket on there. Now, it might sound really technical, but a 6-point is going to give you more bite. The deep well is going to make it fit over top of that if the lug nut's a little bit long.
And if you're real intimidated by that, you can go to some place like AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whatever, and they will probably assist you in getting the right one.
If you get a 12 point, it could strip it. If you get a shallow one, which is a standard one shallow, it may not fit over top of it all the way, and you're not going to get full bite. And then in addition, that 1/2-inch socket that fits your lug nuts, and make sure you got all matching lug nuts. Don't have to use 2 or 3 different size tools. If you got a used car with mismatching stuff, the threads might match, but the outside of them, one might be 3/4, one 7/8, one's 5/16. Like, what the heck? To make sure all your lug nuts match. So in addition to getting that depot socket that fits your lug nut, get a 1/2-inch breaker bar. A breaker bar is like a ratchet wrench, except it doesn't ratchet back and forth. It's just a chunk of steel. You will get more. You can get more torque on that. You can get more force on that than the wrench that comes with your vehicle. Now, if you say, the socket's $10 and the breaker bar is $50, I don't want to spend $60 on a tool. That's fine. Just use the wrench that comes with your car. That will work. It's just this will work much better. And when you're in the dark, in the cold, in the rain, you want every advantage you can have.
Finger Lakes
the
Pepper
fix a
said,
flat.
oh, sorry. Finger Lakes Pepper use impact braided sockets. They're much better than the silver ones.
Yes,
okay.
I use the impact socket. You will pay a little bit more for those, yes. If somebody does have an impact wrench, whether it's electric or pneumatic, it'll work on that. But yes, I use those because for the little bit of extra money, they are tougher. They do hold up better. I didn't want to say that because I was already going too much into technical. I sounded like the Snap-on tool man there.
No, we need to know this stuff. Okay, so
next, what's the next item we need?
The fix-a-flat.
Fix-a-flat is the best way to make the tire guy hate you forever.
I kind of thought that, yes.
Well, first off, I don't really think it works that well, in my personal opinion. Other people I've talked to think it works great. But when you use that to fix your tire and you get to the tire shop and they go to repair it, they're going to put an actual plug in it and repair it properly. They're going to take it off, and that stuff goes everywhere. And that tire guy will hate you. And if this is your regular shop, you want to be friendly with those people because they will cut you a deal on tires, or they will help you out, or they will notice something that needs to get fixed or something. Not if they don't like you. So I'm saying just stay away from that super fix-a-flat. It's just junk.
Okay. What are some other basic tools?
Absolutely a flashlight. That's a must. The reason I said the floor jack with jack stands is if you jack up the car, and all you have underneath it is the jack, whether it be the jack that comes with the vehicle or an actual floor jack from an auto parts store or tool place. If that jack slips, it's going to slip and fall. And if you happen to be underneath that vehicle in any way, that's it for you. You're done. So you don't want to have your foot cut off or your arm cut off, or you get crushed just because you didn't want to have an extra piece of safety item here. A jack stand it's got a solid base and it's got an adjustable foot at the top of it. So what you do is you jack up the vehicle, you put the jack, the piece that touches the vehicle is called the saddle. You put that on the frame of the vehicle. Don't put it on the bumper. Don't put it on anything plastic. Don't put it on something thin. Put it on something tubular or something that looks big and strong and beefy. No hoses, no wires, no pipes. No, please, no, none of that. So you're going to slide underneath there and jack it. Then what you do is you put the jack stand next to it, and you put the foot of that jack stand on the frame as well. If that jack slips for some reason, that jack stand will hold that vehicle and you will be just fine. When you go to put the tire on and you go to lower the vehicle, you just raise the jack up a little bit more, slide the jack stand out, lower the jack, you're good to go. It may be some people don't have a car big enough to hold it. Some people don't want to buy, you can get a set of them real cheap. I mean, I've still got a set that I bought back in the 80s, I think. 80s or 90s. Oh boy, let's say around 1990. I got it for probably $20 back then. I don't know what they're going for now. I've got a couple different sizes. You really don't need a very big one if you have a car. If you have a truck, you want a bigger one. A truck one will not fit a car, but a car one might be able to be extended to fit a truck. But that's an extra precaution. You might say, this is too much. This is too many things. I'll just use what comes with the car. That's all good and fine.
No.
If you use well, hold up now. There is a way to work with that. If you have the jack and the lug wrench that comes with the car, and you take the tire off, and you're fumbling around with the spare and all that, and you're worried, take the tire, lay it on the ground, slide it underneath the car. If that car falls, it's going to fall on the rim of that tire, on the wheel part, whether it's aluminum or steel, and that's going to give you a chance to get out It's a poor man's jack stand. I really don't advise it, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So that the tire that you took off the car is more than just some place to set your butt. You can slide it underneath the vehicle, and it's an extra safety precaution.
Absolutely great idea. Hey, Fanny. Okay, so you mentioned the flashlight.
One more thing.
Okay.
I just thought of something I do with all my vehicles. In the glove box where I keep the flashlight and the tire gauge, I keep extra lug nuts and lug nut studs. So the lug nuts are the bolts or the nuts that hold the wheel to the spindle at the end of the axles. The studs are the bolts that go through the spindle that you slide the wheel onto. Now, each car is going to have their own particular length and thread size. Some cars might share the same part number or whatnot, but just because you've got a lug nut that fits your Honda doesn't mean it's going to fit your Ford. Or just because you got a lug nut stud on your pickup truck doesn't mean it's going to fit your compact car. So if you go to the auto parts store and you say, I have a blah, 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 I want to get 2 studs, and you should have 5 lug nuts on there. You should have 5 lugs on there. I want to get 2 studs and say 2, 3, 4, 5 lug nuts, a spare set, and throw that in your glove box. They will match up the thread sizes and all that and give you that. I keep those in my vehicles. And you say, now I'm not a mechanic. I can't change out a lug nut stud if I break it on the side of the road. You're right, you can't. But if you get it down the street to Joe Blow's shop and they go, look, lady, it's 9 o'clock at night, we'll stay open and fix your vehicle, but we don't have any of these in the shop and all the auto parts stores are closed. You open up your glove box and go, here you go. They'll pop that thing. You can pop it out and pop it in with a hammer and a punch or a C-clamp. Any mechanic can do it. It's not really that hard. I've actually had 2 shear off on me on the expressway. I got off the expressway and pulled into my buddy's house that was nearby and pulled my toolkit out of the back of my car and changed out the 2 studs in his driveway, and we got back on the expressway. It just happened to happen. It's because I didn't tighten down the lug nuts when I did a tire rotation, and I screwed up my car. That's another thing too. After you have a tire rotation done, whether you do it yourself or you take it to a shop, after about 100 miles, you want to take your lug nut wrench and put it on all your lugs and to the right, clockwise, push down, try to tighten them. You might have one that's loose. If you have one that's loose, you could end up working 2 loose. After you are down to 3 lug nuts, that whole tire could come right off. So I know that sounds kind of, some people are like, I don't want to keep extra lug nuts. I don't want to keep some studs. They're not that expensive. They're a few dollars each. I keep them in my vehicles. They've come in handy over the years.
I would really like to see Oily go down to the automotive. I'd like to see a video of Oily going down to the automotive shop and asking for 2 studs and see what happens.
I ain't scared.
Well, I mean, that's what it's called. It's not a bolt because it doesn't have a bolt head. It actually has a spline on it, and you drive it into the backside of the spindle, and it locks itself into place because the splines are like teeth, and it's threaded. So a threaded rod is called a stud in some cases.
Okay. Well, I just think it'd make a great video. Anyway, I'll let you. The only thing I really have to contribute to car is that I wanted to say is I saw this video on this guy's channel who specializes in MRE videos that I'm screen sharing, Steve 1989 MRE info, and he had this video here called 2003 United States Air Force Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape Pilot Kits. And if you can get one of these off Amazon or somewheres, it was basically a survival kit of stuff that wouldn't go bad if it got hot or cold or anything. And it had signal mirrors and all kinds of, it had medical stuff. It had electrolyte things you can add to water and water. It had everything in this kit. And so I just wanted to recommend you guys check out this guy's channel if you're interested in MREs, or specifically if you want to put something in your car that will be useful if it breaks down, whether you can or can't repair it, and it'll help you get to somewhere safe. It's pretty interesting channel if you like MREs, but I thought it was pretty interesting because I basically don't put stuff in my car in Hawaii because it's always so hot. And in Hawaii, especially, they people like to break into cars and steal stuff.
Yeah.
This you could put under your seat, and they just wouldn't look in the back and know it was there. There was something in there that says "steal me." But if this was under your seat, it might be helpful. This survival, evasion, and resistance escape pilot kit.
There you go. Other things, jumper cables, right? Even if you are helping somebody else, a lot of times they don't have jumper cables. So
yeah, nowadays people don't carry jumper cables. They call the auto club.
I do what I did because I lived in LA, and that's what I did because it never took more than 10 minutes for somebody to show up and fix the tire. Why did I need to bother with it? I mean, I had
nowadays a lot of people don't carry jumper cables. Back in the day, everybody did. You can get a box. It's called a jump box. It's a small box with 2 battery cables on it with clamps, and it's got a small motorcycle battery in there. You can actually jump start a vehicle multiple times with it. You could use it to jump start yours or somebody else's. The nice thing is you don't have to be parked next to them.
You mean like one of these?
Yes. Yes, that's just it. Those things are great. I will say for home use, what you're showing is just fine for home use. A professional mechanic's actually going to have a much sturdier, more expensive one because he's got
that are harder to get in Hawaii. Yeah. The more expensive ones because of the shipping issues. It's harder to get in Hawaii. So I got the cheap ones that they sell at Walmart.
And those cheap ones work just fine for the average everyday. You're jumpstarting your car or your neighbor's.
They have a limited lifespan. The batteries go bad, and so after a few years, you just got to chuck it and get a new one.
Pretty much. But if you don't want jumper cables, or you're saying, "Great, I get jumper cables. I'm the only person in the parking lot at 11 p.m." Not if you have one of those boxes, and you can use it to jump somebody else's vehicle. You can use it to jumpstart a motorcycle. You can use it for a lot of things. You're not going to use it on a big diesel truck, but. And yours has that light on there that comes in handy too. And you can set that thing down and shine the light while you're changing a tire. So some of them have the air compressors. You can get an all-in-one where it's got the flashlight, the jump box, and the air compressor all in one. There's a couple different ones you can get if you want to spend the money. It just depends.
Yeah. Also, like Finger Lakes Prepper said, flares and of course reflective triangles.
Yeah, flares are great. I have when I'm at Walmart, that was definitely one of the things I picked up was flares.
Yes, absolutely. And then things like tow ropes and chain, in case you get stuck in the mud from when the snow melts, or the ice melts, you can get stuck in the mud, or you can or whatever. So tow ropes and chain, a small shovel, not just. You can start your fire on it if the ground's wet and if it's a good quality shovel, but also you can use it to dig yourself out of a situation or
that is a very, very good point. You may get stuck in a snowdrift and you cannot get any traction, and you may have to actually dig underneath the car. It might be hung up on the frame of the car.
Yeah, if my car was actually hung up on the frame once, and we needed a piece of wood. It was when my folks were visiting at a vacation rental on the other side of the island, and we needed a piece of wood because the driveway there was just a tree stump that it got stuck on, and they were like late. I had to drop them off at the airport so they could fly home, and it was like
and also if you get stuck in a snowdrift, you want to be sure and dig out around your exhaust pipe, because if the snow is blocking your exhaust pipe, that carbon monoxide can build up in the cab of your vehicle. Not a good thing.
It can also create back pressure, and the engine won't start, or it'll shut off.
Yeah.
Because what comes in must go out. When I was a kid, I had a rear-wheel drive car, and it really did not like to drive in the snow. And I kept a 2x4 behind the driver's seat, and I don't know how many times I would get the thing stuck, and I would jam that 2x4 behind the left rear tire and just gun it in low gear, and it would pop me out of a ditch or whatever it is. So Hawaii, you brought up a good point. If you have a small board, that would be useful. in addition to the shovel. Another thing is a bag of rock salt, not that ice melter I was talking about. Don't get the Roadrunner blend. Get rock salt. When you use rock salt on a road surface and you've got you're trying to get some traction, you want that rough textured rock
you know
salt.
what I keep in my car that would be useful if your frame gets hung up on something is my angled steel rifle target, because it's like it's got the way it is, it's like at an angle. If you put it on the ground on the side, that the part that you hang it from, the flat side will be at it'll be an angle, and so it should be able to help you get off of whatever you're hung up on. It's like, instead of a piece of wood, a flat piece of steel.
Yeah, hold on just a second. I accidentally, I was trying to give Goat Hollow a wrench so he could share a web address, and accidentally banned him, so I had to unban him and give him a wrench. So Goat Hollow, I'm so sorry.
I mentioned that you can use kitty litter too, and shingles. I've never tried to use a roof shingle, but kitty litter, yes, you can get grip with the kitty litter as well. I think the rock salt works better, but the kitty litter is definitely it won't corrode anything if it busts through the bag.
And you know, it also adds weight to your vehicle, which helps you get some traction, like if you put it on the rear part of your vehicle if you need to.
Well, in my case, I just tried to power through it, and I wound up just getting hung up on a so the wheel wasn't even touching the ground. It was hung up on a tree stump, so I definitely needed a piece of wood or a piece of steel or something to put jam under the wheel to get it off of the tree.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me look. Okay, you know, speaking of that, check your four-wheel drive, make sure it's working properly, engaging like it's supposed to, all of that stuff.
When you check it, do not check it on dry pavement. It will damage the transfer case, and you don't want to be paying for that. And I'll give you a good example of how I recently tested four-wheel drive, even though it's not winter condition. Last winter, a rock or something flew underneath my truck and hit the wiring going into the solenoid. That's a little electric motor that makes my four-wheel drive engage and disengage. So this big aluminum transfer case that'll switch it from two-wheel to four-wheel drive has a little electric motor in a plastic housing with two wires going into it. The electric motor actually grabs the chain in there and shoves the chain one way or the other to either grab the front axle and the back axle, or just the back axle. And I have skid plates underneath the vehicle, but apparently Dodge didn't think it would be a good idea to put the skid plates actually to protect the transfer case. And
they charge a fortune for those solenoids. I mean, I have a 2000 Blazer, and I had to replace my solenoid. It cost a fortune.
Well, if sometimes you can go to the junkyard and get the whole dang transfer case, and it'll have the solenoid on it, and then you don't have to buy the individual part. But what I did was the rock or whatever it was hit the wiring and severed it where the wiring goes right into the solenoid. So instead of severing it 3 or 4 inches back from the plug where I could just cut it and splice it, it did it at the base of the plug. So I had to buy a kit that had a whole new plug and wires, and you had to actually pin them through and the whole 9 yards.
We had to buy the computer chip too.
Well, I ended up replacing the connector and about 6 inches of wire, and then I triple wrapped it after I had used heat shrink and all that to make sure all the wiring was good. I triple wrapped it to protect it, since there's no skid plate there to protect it. So if a rock or something hits it in the future, it hopefully doesn't sever it again. If it had severed it further back, I wouldn't have even bought a repair kit at the dealership. I would have just spliced it and would have been good to go. Okay, great. It's dry out, it's warm out. How do you test your four-wheel drive without damaging your transfer case? You find a dirt road with gravel. And there isn't one very far from here. There aren't a whole lot in my area, but I found one, and I kept switching it into and out of four-wheel drive. When I first put it in, it wouldn't engage. I turned it off and switched it back. It engaged. I tested it a couple different times. So find something loose, like gravel.
Well, I never had a problem. My car has all-wheel drive, and it automatically senses when you need if I put it in all-wheel drive, then it automatically senses if I need it or not, and it turns it on
Yeah, all-wheel drive works differently than the four-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is more forgiving as far as driving it back and forth on dry pavement or on loose stuff like that. But all-wheel drive is more expensive as an option. It's more expensive to repair. There's less of them out there, so the parts are harder to source. And when you change one tire, you change all four. If you don't, you're going to have issues because you'll damage your transfer case if you've got one or two old tires on there with one or two new tires. Whereas with four-wheel drive, you could, as long as you don't engage that four-wheel drive, you can have old tires on the front, new tires on the back. You just don't want to engage it with old tires. You don't. If you've got a four-wheel drive truck and you've been using two-wheel drive all summer and your front tires are old and your back tires are new, get some new front tires.
Yeah. Okay, so also ice scraper and brush, of course, that's a given, and then the little spray, like if you get an ice storm and your vehicle doors ice over and your windshield ices, you can do the sorry, they're being crazy over in the side chat here.
Well, I think it's important to have stuff that if you can't fix your vehicle, you have to walk to someplace safe, and so it's important to have a few things in your car in that event.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to those things here in a minute. I'm just doing the maintenance now, but yeah, we'll do like a basic survival kit here in a minute. But ice scraper and brush, some of that spray on ice melt stuff for your door handles or the cracks of your doors if you absolutely have to, things like that, and take that with you into work or the store or whatever, like in your bag or in your pocket or whatever you got to do.
Another thing you can use is if you don't have that spray stuff, use hot water. You can boil hot water in a coffee pot. Be careful how you apply it. You don't want to dump the hot water right on the glass, but you can loosen up things. Do not spray that silicone in your locks. If you have a mechanical lock on your vehicle, you don't use a little key fob, little clicky. Okay, do not spray that crappy silicone in your lock. But I have freed up frozen doors before with hot water.
I have too. That does work too if you're able to do that. Check the thermostat, right?
Now the thermostat, the way a mechanic does it is he's actually got a test kit. You might be able to get one at one of the big box auto parts stores. You leave a deposit more or less. You borrow the tool. You bring the tool back. They give you your deposit back. They call it a loan-a-tool problem, but it's not really loaning. If you don't bring it back, you just bought it. But the tool will allow you to put, you take the radiator cap off, and you use this tool and you build up pressure, and it'll tell you if your system has any leaks. Because if the system won't hold pressure, there's a leak in it. The other thing you can do is you can take the cap and you can put it on this tool and you can pressurize the cap, and it'll tell you if the cap is holding pressure or not. If the cap isn't holding pressure, toss the cap, get a new one. That or take it to a mechanic, he'll do the same thing. He'll test your cap and he'll test your system to make sure there's no leaks and it'll hold pressure. The thermostat itself is not very expensive. If you want to test one, the way you would do it is you would stick it in a pot of boiling water, and if you see the spring move, it's good. If it doesn't, it's bad. But they're not that expensive.
Yeah.
Nobody uses the boiling water trick anymore. They just throw them away and just put new ones.
Yeah. Also check the heater and defroster. Make sure all that's working properly, right? You don't want to end up stuck.
Couple years ago, I had a issue where what they call the blend door went bad on my vehicle. There's on the Chryslers, and I'm sure it's on some of the other makes too, there's a piece called a clamshell underneath the dashboard, and it's plastic, and everything inside of it is plastic, and it's plastic. And these are the doors that open and close to make your defrost work, or make it go to the floor, make it blow the air on you, or to mix it up a little bit between this and that. And these doors are plastic, and they will eventually break. They're getting hot, they're getting cold, they're getting hot, they're getting cold, they're going to break. What happened was my blend door broke for my defroster. You have to pull the entire dash off the vehicle to get to this clamshell. You can't just pop it out. Well, when you do that, you also have to, on the other side, you've got the heater core, which brings in the coolant. I don't know, people might not know, but your heat doesn't come from something electrical. The same coolant that cools your engine also runs through your heater core, and that's where your hot air comes from, because once the engine gets up to operating temperature, it's about 195 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's how the heater, that's why your car may not blow out hot air right away, but once you get it warmed up, it will. So the heater core runs through that clamshell. The Freon lines for the air conditioning run through there. So they had to pull the Freon out of the vehicle, pull the air conditioning lines off, pull the heater core, pull all that, just to replace the blend door. I drove for 2 years with no defroster. It was a real pain. It wasn't the brightest thing to do, but it was $2,000 because of the labor to have them do this. For an extra $100, I had them put in a new heater core. Now, the heater core, it wasn't giving me any problems. The vehicle was making heat, but I said, you have to take this thing off, and it's buried in here. Why not replace it with a brand new one since you're already here? So for an extra $100, just do it. And the reason I say, if you're ever in a situation where you have to do any work in there, where they're around the heater core, the vehicle's older, maybe you do have your blend doors broke and you can't figure out what's wrong, and you're like, how much? It's labor intensive. I farmed it out because I didn't want to deal with it. I've pulled dashboards before. Forget that. And I work for a company that makes dashboards. Definitely forget that. Anyhow, a heater core is simply a tiny radiator that's in your dash. It can build up sediment, kind of like your drain pipe in your sink will build up sediment over time, and it will plug. And when a heater core plugs, it will not make any more heat. You can actually overheat the vehicle a little bit and things like that.
Stuff like this is why I dropped auto class in high school. Went back to
if you do
advanced
it enough,
placement English.
If you do it enough and you have enough repairs and you have enough vehicles over time, you start to get to know what works and what doesn't. But yes, they change stuff up constantly. But all I'm saying is for an extra $100, if you're already in there doing work, or if your defroster isn't working, you're going, I can't figure out, it could be a little plastic blend door. And it's not as simple as just cutting a section of the dashboard out and replacing it.
So this is why you don't like Glocks, the whole plastic thing, hot, cold?
No, I don't like Glocks because of the way they feel in my hand, but I'm going to give them another try. No, I used to drive a little plastic car around. Plastic isn't too bad.
Okay, and can you talk about checking the exhaust system for leaks and clogs and coolant and
so your coolant,
light?
Well, the coolant, there's a bottle underneath the hood in the engine compartment, and there'll be some lines on a bottle, and it should say hot or cold, or there'll be an upper line and a lower line. When the engine's warm, the coolant should be at the lower line or between the upper and lower line. That bottle is an overflow bottle, so if the engine overheats, the coolant's got somewhere to go. If it's only overheating a little bit, you don't want to just blow everything up there. It's also a place where you add coolant on some vehicles. If you've got ethyl glycol, which is the green stuff, keep the green stuff. If you've got the Dexcool, which is the pink stuff, keep the pink stuff. Don't mix it. And don't put it in straight either. You have to mix it with water.
Okay, wait a minute. What about Red Dawn, that movie? Can you just piss into
You can pee into a radiator. Yes, if you mix ethyl glycol and Dexcool, or I've got this stuff in my truck called HOT. It's some sort of organic blah 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 blah. If you mix different antifreezes or water, or just put straight water in there, it will work. It just won't work as effectively. The problem is if you have a certain kind of antifreeze that comes with your vehicle when it's new, and that's what's still in it when you go to change your antifreeze. If you mix types of antifreeze together, you will contaminate it and won't work as well. So you want to try to keep the original stuff in there. When in doubt, go with the green stuff, the ethyl glycol, because most engines just plain use ethyl glycol. It works. So, but you don't want to use it straight. It's a 50-50 mix. Really, the most efficient mix is 68%. Well, if you want to get scientifical and measure out 68%, go right ahead. But if you do
nobody does it. So you're saying the green stuff mixed with water?
Yes, and if you can use distilled water, and the reason being is there won't be any minerals in there. Minerals in the water will build up deposits on the inside of the cooling system and cause corrosion and blockages. But if you have to use tap water, it'll be fine. In general, it'll just be fine. For the most part, your cooling system will be just fine as long as you don't introduce something new to it or it doesn't have any leaks or anything like that. As far as the exhaust system for winterizing, I don't really think much of the exhaust system except for when you're warming up your car. If you're warming up your car for a long period of time, to get that heater going, then you're probably doing your exhaust system a favor, because if you drive a short distance and the exhaust system doesn't get warm, all that moist air gets trapped in there and it actually rusts it from the inside out. But if you get the exhaust really hot, it'll burn it out and it'll make the exhaust system last longer. Don't warm up your car in an enclosed structure like a garage. So that's my exhaust tip.
Yeah, for sure. And like somebody said a while ago, wiper blades. Make sure you replace those if you need to, because they dry out over the summer. So make sure those wiper blades are checked.
And if you live in a place like Michigan, you'll go through a set every year. I recommend don't go cheap on wiper blades. I know some people go, who cares? I change them out every year anyhow. I might as well go cheap. The more expensive wiper blades, the ones made out of synthetic rubber, they tend to work better. They last longer, that sort of thing. As far as the battery goes, you can take it in and have your battery tested for free. I don't recommend it. The reason being is these guys are in the business of selling batteries. I used to work at an auto parts store. They want you to sell the batteries. So if you do a load test on it, they may or may not, they may go, well, it's kind of borderline, you should really do it. And you can do a load test on a battery and it can pass. And then the next day it's negative 20 degrees outside and that battery falls apart and does not work. And you go, I just had it load tested. Depending on the conditions in which you load test the battery and the conditions the battery operates under, if it's an older battery, that load test isn't going to tell you anything. I would check the terminals to make sure they're clean before I do anything else. I will say this though, with the batteries though, a lot of these stores will give you a warranty, like they'll give you a 2-year free replacement and then they'll prorate it after that. That stuff comes in handy in case you get a bad battery or you go through a lot of bad winters. Another thing is cold cranking amps. When I was in the military, I was stationed in North Carolina. Well, I was stationed all over the place, but one of the places was North Carolina. And I brought my car from Michigan down to North Carolina, and it needed a new battery. And when I went to the Sears, they couldn't sell me the same battery I had. I had like 800 cold cranking amps. And the best thing to do is
still in business?
Well, this was a long time ago, and I'm an old dude, man. So the best they could do is like a 550 cold crank. And I said, no, this has got an 800. I want an 800. We can't get you one. Why not? Because, man, you bought this battery in Michigan. This is North Carolina. Who needs 800 cold cranking amps in North Carolina? So I don't know if that is still relevant today. You may live in a colder climate, and if your vehicle breaks down in a warmer climate, they may not be able to sell you a battery with as many cold cranking amps. Don't worry about the cranking amps. These sales guys will try to go, well, it's got 1,000 cranking amps. Yeah, but it's only got 600 cold cranking amps. You want the cold cranking amps. That is what's going to start your vehicle on a really, really crappy day. Unless you live where Hawaii lives and you don't, then it doesn't matter. It's not a
well,
factor.
If you drive your car up to the top of where top of Mauna Loa or Mauna Kea, where the telescopes are, or there's some very high mountains where there is snow, and there's actually tours that take people up there to star watch, but their cars are set for that.
Unless you've added a lot of electrical accessories to your vehicle after the fact, make sure that your vehicle gets a replacement battery with at least as many cold cranking amps as the original battery or more. More is always better. More will not hurt it. So cold cranking amps definitely come in handy. So just make sure that that's what you look for. Don't look at the CA, look at the CCA. So
good to know.
If you want to get it load tested, go ahead. You're going to have a zit-faced kid who don't know nothing about cars, following the instructions that he's got, and he's going to have his boss pushing him to sell batteries because they have a quota of how many dollars per hour they need to have go out the door on their average sale.
Well, that's running a business.
Yep. So there were all kinds of times where they would tell me to sell people stuff they didn't need, and I wouldn't do it. I said, you hired me because I know how to fix cars. So I'm going to sell them the good stuff, and I'm going to sell them what they could use. And they'd get mad because the management would say, well, this month we're pushing this, and this month
business is business. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. It's if they can't keep the shop open, then what's the point?
They're not gonna. I'm talking about they'd sell the guy a $4 item he wouldn't use, and I'd sell him a $50 item that would save him hassle down the road. You're gonna tell me that's not good salesmanship? No, I'm just saying that if you don't know a whole lot about cars and you take them into these shops, these guys are there to make you feel good about going to them for advice, about making you feel good about they're going to wheel their little machine out there and test your alternator and test this and test that. These guys are not mechanics. So just consumer,
Yeah.
advice, buyer be warned. But as far as testing a battery, unless the battery is really old, I really don't. If you have a very, very cold day, the battery could fall apart even though the day before it passed a load test. So.
Okay, and I have temporary memory loss, I guess. I can't remember if we talked already about changing the oil and adjusting viscosity for wintertime.
Oh, no, we didn't, but yeah, you talked about that in the pre-chat, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So both of our vehicles, well, all three, I don't ride the motorcycle in the winter because you don't ride on ice unless you're crazy, but our vehicles use the same viscosity in warm weather or cold weather. It doesn't really matter. But in the past, I have owned vehicles that went from, I think they went from 10:30 in the summer to 5:30 in the winter or something like that. It's been a long time. You want to check your owner's manual. If the owner's manual, don't worry about what that kid at Uncle Ed's oil change says. Like I said, it's just a zit-faced kid who doesn't know anything about cars and doesn't really care. I'm telling you, I used to work in the industry.
I always take my car to that what's that oil change place that
the Valvoline 10-minute.
No, the place Lex Brody's.
Okay, never heard of it.
They sell tires, and they do have a oil change, and they can get your safety check done that you have to do once a year.
Well, as far if you have different viscosities, it'll be in the owner's manual, and it'll say above 32 degrees, below 32 degrees. That's usually right in the scale where they go to. If you take it to the oil change place because you don't do your own oil, just make sure that they're putting the right kind of oil in there. Just ask them. I
just do 50%. I think I do 50% synthetic or something like that.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought up synthetics. Okay, so the people who say I'm going to just run synthetic, blah 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 blah, it's good and it's bad, and let me tell you why. If you have a brand new vehicle, do not run synthetic in it unless it came from the factory with synthetic. The reason being is your average gaskets. These are the pieces of rubber or paper or other materials that are between the metal pieces in the engine. They seal the engine. You have to bolt all these pieces together. If you don't seal them, oil will leak between them. The gaskets seal them. If you don't have the right material for the gaskets on a brand new engine and you put synthetic oil in there, that synthetic oil is so thin it will leak between the gaskets. If you have a high-end vehicle or maybe a newer production vehicle where they have synthetic oil in there, they will put from the factory these more expensive to manufacture gaskets in there that will handle the synthetic oil. So check your owner's manual once again, or it'll say underneath the hood, use synthetic, blah, 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 blah. All right, so if you had like a Corvette or a Porsche, I can tell you right off the bat, they use synthetic right out the factory. If your vehicle is over a year in age, then it is old enough to start using synthetic oil. What happens is if your vehicle uses conventional oil with conventional gaskets in it, brand new, the conventional oil will actually bake on the inside of the engine and seal the engine from the inside out. So you want it to bake on there and seal these standard average gaskets and that sort of thing. If you don't give it an opportunity to do that and you put synthetic in there, the synthetic will get between places regular oil won't. The advantage of the synthetic oil on a freezing freaking cold day where everything is frozen, that oil has viscosity as if it was a warm day. So when that oil pump starts pumping from the motion of the engine, when you first start it up, it is sucking this oil from the bottom of the engine and trying to pump it to the top. From the top, it has to work its way down, back down to the bottom, and it goes in a big circle. If it's a cold day and you got conventional oil, it's like sucking molasses through this pump. But if you have synthetic, it's like sucking water through it. So you want the synthetic, even though it costs more, for the cold weather operation because it's going to lubricate your engine faster, reducing your engine wear and increasing the life of your engine. Just buyer beware. If you have a brand new vehicle, check the owner's manual. If it does not say the engine is designed for synthetic oil, don't use synthetic oil for 1 year. Just give it a year.
Okay, wow. That is really good to know. And Mouse just messaged me and said she was thinking it was Wednesday, and she has company from Maryland. So she apologizes, and I was like,
no. What day it was? Okay.
Yeah, happens sometimes. So okay, and other than checking your lights, headlights, tail lights, emergency lights, you know, making sure all that works properly. I think that's it on the maintenance that I can think of. Is there any other maintenance issues that you can think of, Squib?
Off the top of my head, no. You think I would have all this stuff right up in front of me because I deal with winter every year here. I mean, I just make sure I do as much maintenance as I can while the weather's warm. We've been doing some work on removing rust from my truck and doing some touch-up, that sort of thing, because paint obviously won't dry in freezing cold weather and rust looks awful. But just whatever maintenance you can do in warm weather, that way you don't have to deal with it when it's cold, because when it is cold out there, it is just so cold. If you're like me, you just don't want to be out there. I've got a diesel truck. It's got 2 batteries in it. When 2 years ago I had to replace both of them, it was negative 21 degrees that morning. I was late for work, and it was just a mess. Have to get a ladder to climb up there. The truck sets up so high to get to the batteries. They're heavy. It's freezing outside. My fingers are going numb. You know, so you want to try to do whatever maintenance you can, but some things you cannot avoid. I will tell you that the taillights on my truck, they tend to burn out more in the winter, of course. There's just
okay, hey, Squib,
weather gets to. So
what about this one? When I used to have my Mustang, I followed the car guy's advice, and I had the shop. I used to get it serviced at Ford. I had him put in an extra gasoline filter.
For winterizing it, it's really not necessary but for a high performance engine, if you're worried about protecting your investment to keep particles out of there from damaging anything that is high performance, that's really more protecting your investment. On a diesel engine, you may have a lot of cases you've got 2 filters or 2 pumps or things like that, whereas on a gas engine you don't really have that. Some gas engines don't even have a fuel filter. They just got a screen bag inside the fuel tank. But that's really just for protecting your investment, not winterizing.
All right. Yeah, I remember doing that. And
is not just winterized. It's basic vehicle maintenance and stuff that you need to do, but you definitely don't want to be stuck out somewhere with something like this not working. What was you going to say, Hawaii?
Yeah, I just did that because the car guys who used to have a syndicated radio show that they recommended doing that, so that's why I had it done, because it was cheap insurance.
One thing I do that is, once again, me going overboard, me being anal about vehicle maintenance, is I keep spare replacement lamps in, not headlights, but all, the side marker, the turn signal, the stop lamps, the backup lamps in my vehicles. And if I need special screwdrivers to remove the lamp housing, like if it's got a Torx, which is that funny star shape, or it's a tamper-proof Torx, so it's got a hole in the middle and a funny star shape, or it uses maybe it's in a real tight spot and I don't really want to pull the wiring harness off, so I need a stubby screwdriver to fit in there, whatever. I actually have the screwdrivers and the spare bulbs for my vehicles in them, and when they burn out, I just change them in the driveway. I don't have to go in the back and go fishing through. I've got everything right there. Another thing I keep are zip ties, cable ties. Try to get 14 or 28 inch ones that are about 1/3 of an inch in thickness. You might have to zip tie something together. You may want to keep some clear plastic drop cloth in there, some duct tape. Maybe even get some cold weather duct tape. If you go to the big box hardware stores, they'll have cold weather duct tape. If you have a broken window or something like that and you got to seal it up, until you get home, that sort of thing is something you can have in there. What else do I keep in my vehicles? First aid kit, obviously. Toe strap. Toe strap. If you have a vehicle, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say wire, like if you have to wire up your exhaust.
Yep. Coat hanger wire will do just fine. Yep. If you have a vehicle that tows, I recommend you use a tow strap, not a tow chain, because that chain will pull that other vehicle to pieces. You will bend the frame on that other vehicle, but that strap has give. And I've pulled so many vehicles out with my pickup truck that year or two ago I broke that strap. I need to get a new one.
Yeah, they aren't that expensive.
A lot of people have windows that are have the motor to automatic windows. And sometimes those motors break and those windows fall, and it's not fun when it's in the middle of the winter or when it's raining. So yeah, some good kind of tape, even like that, the real heavy duty clear packing tape or Gorilla tape is great to have.
I would go with the Gorilla over the packing tape. The packing tape's not going to hold up. It's not going to stick in that cold weather very well. No. And a drop cloth, you just go into the painting section and they'll have them in there. You don't really need a thick one. Maybe something to cut it with, utility knife, scissors, unless you just carry a multi-tool on you or a pocket knife or something. But it might be the difference between just taping it up and being able to drive home, or trying to drive home with freezing cold coming in. And
it's the hidden numismatist is in the external.
Hidden numismatist. Good to see you. So we did not get into what to pack for like a get home bag or emergency kit to have in your vehicle, as far as just basic stuff other than the flashlight. So I think we'll do that next week. And that'll give us something to talk about next week. But yeah, I mean, it's great. Oh, and a fire extinguisher. You want to have a fire extinguisher. There's a couple of people on here that have had experiences with that. So just small fire extinguishers for your vehicle is a good thing to have.
I will say that with the fire extinguisher, the cold could affect it depending on how cold it gets where you're at. If it gets really, really cold, it may not work. I'm not talking about a water one. I'm talking about a dry chemical one, a foam one for sure. So just be aware of that. So depending on where you're at.
Baking soda or something in their vehicle, like a big sack of baking soda that they can try to smother the fire with if they need to?
Yeah, possibly.
Kind of depends what kind of fire.
Be effective. Stump Greenwood, South Carolina says recovery straps stretch and toe straps don't. Yeah, I guess if depending on how you look at it, I think the recovery straps are looped and they're 4-inch, and the toe straps are 2-inch, and they have hooks. So it really just depends on what you get and how you apply it. You may end up having to wrap this thing around something heavy duty underneath the vehicle you're towing or that sort of thing. And Goat Hollow says it carries 550 paracord. Yeah, just like the cable ties, that could be something that you need to tie something up until you can get the vehicle home or get it out of the way or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, as far as your vehicle maintenance, if you have to change a flat or something like that, you may have discussed this while I was out of the room, but some good thick gloves to keep your hands warm, but then some thinner gloves for when you're trying to do some of that fine maintenance on your vehicle. Some thinner gloves, but that'll still kind of help you have grip and stuff like that, and kind of protect your hands out in the cold is real good. And then those deals that slip over your shoes where they have the spikes on them so you can get traction on ice if you need to. Good thing to have on hand, both in your emergency kit in your vehicle and, just to have on hand, period. So,
yeah, those tools that you're using, if they're in the trunk of your vehicle, are going to be as cold as the outside. So you got this big, heavy steel bar you're trying to break these possibly rusted lug nuts off with, and it's freezing cold, and then you bang your hand against it. Ouch. So gloves are definitely helpful.
Okay, I posted the name of that channel that had the Air Force Survival Escape Innovation Kit. It's in the external.
Oh, okay. And HRM Weapons Machinist said axe, tarp, MRE, water lighter, knife, ammo, weapon. Yeah, we're going to discuss a lot of that next week. Tree said carry an extra shower curtain in your vehicle so that you're not laying directly in the snow. Like if you have to crawl up under your vehicle to look or whatever, you have that to lay on. It'll still be cold, but at least you won't be getting wet from that. And we'll talk about clothing and emergency stuff to keep on hand for next week as well. And Lee Ralph, next week, if you join us, anything that you see that we might have missed, yeah, definitely come and either comment on the video after this post or come and talk to us next week and add that, because I don't think it'll take too terribly long to go over emergency stuff to keep on hand. Also, fuses for your vehicle, right? I don't know if you mentioned that, but fuses are a good thing to have, extra fuses.
Your vehicle should have one of each, the smaller fuses, maybe not the specialty ones or like a fuel pump relay or that sort of thing, that should come with it. However, if you bought it used and the previous owner used them up, now you might want to replace them. If you're popping fuses over and over again, you got a problem. If you pop a fuse on a rare occasion, it's probably nothing. But don't think that if you keep changing out, it's going to fix the problem. It might be the difference between walking home and not walking home, so definitely have it. Another thing is, if you want to get all MacGyvery, you can swap out relays sometimes. In the same big box where they got the fuses, they'll have relays, and maybe the relay that controls your I don't know, wipers will work your fuel pump or something like that. So it's just something just to think about. Don't get too crazy and start taking your car apart, though.
Yeah, and make sure that you keep your owner's manual in your vehicle, because sometimes you'll have a warning light on something and it's something simple like your gas cap didn't get screwed in properly or something like that. So there's some simple things that you can try looking in your owner's manual before going on to the more in-depth stuff. So anyway, and make sure, like Dusty said, you have a tow truck company phone number. Make sure you have a charger for your cell phone. Make sure your cell phone stays charged up if you've got one, so that you can get a hold of emergency if all else fails. You need to be able to get a hold of somebody. So make sure you have all that, and like Lee Ralph said, make sure you know the fuse styles and stuff. So thank you guys so much for coming by. Next week we'll talk about some emergency things to keep in either like a little go bag or just to have on hand in your vehicle for you to use should you be stranded in your vehicle. So thanks so much for coming. Thank you, Squib, for all your great maintenance advice. I'm so thankful that you're here.
Squib's Car Show.
I don't know how to fix everything. I just know how to fix a few things.
Well, it sounded like you knew quite a bit more than I did, so I would have just been going through the list and they would have just had to figure out what it meant. So it's great to have, I mean, some of it I know, but
like I said, I dropped my high school automotive class and took advanced placement English instead. So
well, I had to learn basic stuff. You need to know how to change a flat tire. You need to know how to, check your air filter. You need to know some basic things like that. Check the fluids in your vehicle and stuff. First aid kit with gloves is also a good thing to make sure you have on hand, because when you're working on a vehicle, you can get hurt. You can come across an accident or something like that and need to help somebody else. So, all right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you,
hey, what's up?
Chat, for all your input and suggestions, too. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them. Some of them I knew we were going to get to, so I didn't exactly acknowledge them because we were in the middle of something else. But yeah,
hey, we can't watch NFL football on Thursdays anymore, so this is a good time to have a show.
No big loss for me anyway, so but yeah. I don't even want to go there on that. It was a great chat. I appreciate all of you for coming and your suggestions, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And come with your preparedness items that you think you need to have on hand for survival if you get stuck in your vehicle next week. Thanks for coming, guys. Love y'all. Bye.
Good night.
Not for long. That's what the NFL is.